Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where I share creepy and scary stories that will give you chills. If you love horror and spooky tales, make sure to subscribe and join me every week for a new story. Let's get into the dark side together. That was the first thing Elena noticed, the way it moved through the towering pines like breath in a throat too old to remember how to speak. The van door slammed shut behind her as she stepped into the shadow of Black Hollow Forest, a name that didn't appear on any official maps, but lived in whispers passed between hunters and old locals who never quite made eye contact when asked about it. She turned, squinting at the others as they unloaded gear under a sky already bruised with evening. 5 days, she said out loud, moored herself into the team. That's all we need. Behind her, Aaron Cross, their youngest member, grunted as he pulled out the heavy drone case. 5 days in this place might be 5 too many. Elena ignored him. She was used to sarcasm, resistance, doubt. It was the nature of activism. But this mission was different. Not just about saving trees, but about uncovering a place time had tried to erase. Logging companies were set to tear through the forest within 2 weeks. The footage they captured could change that. Or so she told herself. Marcus, where's the trail split again? Elena turned to their guide, a tall man with gray in his beard and a slouch in his stance, as if the forest had bent him slightly over the years. He hesitated. It's not a trail. It's more of a memory. You don't follow a path here, you listen. Listen to what? Asked Dr. Fiona West, brushing a pine needle from her shoulder. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he picked up his pack and began walking. They hiked until dusk. The trees thickened unnaturally fast. By the time they reached the clearing Marcus had described, a shallow bowl of moss-covered stones and gnarled roots, it felt like they crossed into a different world. The sun barely touched the earth here. As they set up camp, Elena recorded her intro for the documentary. Day 1, Black Hollow Forest. Our goal is to document the ancient ecosystem of this area before it's destroyed. There are rumors of biodiversity no one's recorded, species that don't exist anywhere else. Some even say the forest is alive in ways we don't understand. Behind her, Aaron let out a mocking ooh and made a ghost noise. Fiona smirked, but Marcus was watching the tree lean. That night, the wind changed. It wasn't cold, but it carried weight, like breath from lungs filled with dirt. The fire sputtered. Somewhere deep in the trees, a cracking sound echoed. Too rhythmic to be an animal. Marcus stood. I'll walk the perimeter. Alone? Elena asked. He nodded. Safer that way. That made no sense. But he was gone before anyone could argue. Later that night, Elena awoke with a start. No noise. No wind. No insects. Just silence. Her tent was hot and damp. She pushed outside into the night and saw Fiona standing near the fire, staring into the woods. You hear it? Fiona whispered. Elena's skin prickled. Hear what? The voice. Elena shook her head. You had a nightmare. That's all. But Fiona didn't move. Her pupils were huge, nearly swallowing the whites of her eyes. It said my name. Elena took her by the arm. Let's get you back in the tent. No, listen. Fiona gripped her wrist suddenly. It told me about the child. I never told anyone about her. Not even my husband. Elena froze. Fiona's face crumpled. I left her alone. I shouldn't have. I was tired, and she was crying, and I needed to sleep. When I woke up, she was face down in the pool. Elena didn't know what to say. Fiona looked toward the trees. How does it know? Dawn came pale and trembling. Marcus hadn't returned. Aaron was pacing. We should leave. I'm serious. He's a pro, right? If he hasn't come back by now... No, Elena snapped. We stick to the plan. One night doesn't change anything. Fiona didn't say a word. She was staring into the forest again. They followed Marcus's trail east. It ended less than 30 meters in. Literally ended, no footprints, no snapped twigs, nothing. As if he'd stopped walking and been lifted. Then Aaron found it. A tree, old and wide as a truck, with letters carved deep into the bark. Elena stepped closer. The letters weren't English. They looked ancient, Curved symbols, loops and side loops. Some shimmered in the light, like oil on water. And below them, something else, freshly etched. I know you. Aaron backed away. Nope. No way. This is a setup. Fiona was whispering to herself. Elena reached for her arm again, but this time Fiona recoiled. Her eyes were bleeding at the edges. I can't stay here, she mumbled. It's pulling me back. To what? To her. To the moment I killed her. You didn't kill anyone, Fiona. But Fiona was already walking into the woods, and she didn't stop, even when they called her name, even when she screamed once, even when the scream was cut off like a wire being snipped. They never found Fiona's body, only her boots, neatly placed by a root, and above it, new writing etched into bark. To knowledge returned. Aaron whispered, "We have to leave now." But Elena looked at the symbols, her voice hollow. "We can't. We're not just being hunted." She turned to him. "We're being studied." Rain had not stopped for days. By the time Agent Walker and his team reached the village of Montvale, the dirt roads had melted into rivers of brown sludge, and the sky hung low and heavy, like a curtain pulled tight across the sun. Rain soaked their boots, dripped from brims of their hoods, and pattered endlessly on the abandoned rooftops around them. There were no lights in the houses, no barking dogs, no children, just rain and silence. Still no radio contact? Walker asked, wiping a layer of mismoscope as they moved up the main street. "Nothing," replied Agent Dana Ortega, scanning the surrounding buildings. "All comms go dead the second we pass the eastern ridge." "And the villagers?" "Same as the last 5 towns," she said grimly. "Vanished. Not a body. Not a drop of blood. Just gone." The team moved cautiously, their rifles raised, footsteps squelching in the mud. The only sound was the rain, and something else, faint, like scratching, whispers. Walker turned sharply. "Did you hear that?" Ortega nodded. "Third time now. Something's watching us." The houses were wrong. They looked weather-worn but preserved, as if no one had lived in them for years. Yet nothing had rotted. No decay, no rust. Not a single window was broken. Everything was in place, untouched by time, but undeniably empty. Like a diorama, like a trap. One of the agents, Travis, pushed open a door and entered a home with a flickering flashlight. The others followed. Inside was a small living room. Family portraits lined the walls, but every face and every frame had been scratched out, clawed violently. Deep gouges in the wood floor led toward the back hallway. Travis pointed to the wall. "Look." The wallpaper had bubbled outward in one spot, bulging unnaturally. It pulsated, slowly. Alive. Walker stepped forward cautiously and touched it with the butt of his rifle. The bulge quivered. Then it burst. A shower of black, oily liquid splattered the wall, sizzling against the air like acid. The room filled with a stench of rot and sulfur. They all stepped back as a shape emerged behind the wallpaper, long-limbed, curled like a fetus. It melted as soon as light hit it, hissing and shrinking into a puddle. Ortega stared, horrified. That was human-shaped. "What the hell is going on here?" whispered Travis. Suddenly, their comm screeched, static, sharp, and screaming. Then a voice, garbled. "You're not supposed to be here. It's not your memory, not your dream." And then silence. Walker looked around the room. "We're not just being watched. We're inside something." They ran out of the house. The rain hadn't stopped. It never would. Not in this place. Not where memories lived and died in loops. And something had just woken up. Whispers. That was the first thing Anna noticed as she stepped beyond the rusted entrance gate of the Asphodel facility. They weren't actual voices, at least not in the traditional sense. They felt like memories echoing to the concrete, rising from the soil, trickling down from the exposed pipes above, as if the building itself had a soul, and that soul was talking in its sleep. Cameras were rolling. Ryan held the boom mic like it was a weapon. Even Caleb, the group's cynical skeptic, had gone unusually quiet. "Hold this," Anna said, handing Lara her flashlight while she raised the camera to her eye. The main lobby had clearly once been a reception area. A half-collapsed front desk stood covered in thick layers of dust. File drawers were open, paper scattered like leaves. A child's shoe lay in one corner, rotted through at the sole. A single wheelchair sat in the middle of the room, facing the entrance as if someone had left in a hurry, but never made it out. Caleb nudged the wheelchair. It squeaked once, then stopped. Classic horror setup, he muttered. Anna was already focused on the peeling mural on the wall behind the desk. Bright pastel tones of sunshine, flowers, smiling children. Overrun now with water stains and black mold. Someone had painted over the lower half in dark red spray paint. We never left. Lara paled. That wasn't there in the online footage. It wasn't, Anna confirmed, checking her phone. No reception. No GPS. She tapped the screen. Nothing. Then came the sound, a dragging shuffle, distant but unmistakable. Everyone turned toward the hallway to the right of the lobby, flashlights flickering down the darkness. Sound guy? Anna asked, trying to steady her breath. Got it, Ryan confirmed, his mic aimed like a sniper rifle. They followed the hallway. Metal doors lined the walls, some labeled with room numbers, others with names. Observation, therapy, a quiet room. Inside one of the rooms, Caleb found a rusted patient bed with 4 thick leather straps bolted to its frame. On the walls, claw-like scratches radiated outward in every direction. On the ceiling, scrawled in faded ink, "Open the door on the floor." Lara whispered, "What door?" Anna turned toward a grate in the corner. It wasn't a door in the traditional sense, more of a maintenance hatch, sealed with 4 latches. A red sigil had been spray-painted on it. Beneath the grime, another phrase in blocky handwriting. "Do not open. IT sees through you." Caleb knelt beside it. Probably just local teens trying to be edgy. Then the grate shifted. Just a little. Just enough to make the lock rattle. Everyone stepped back. "We should leave," Lara said, her voice trembling. "We're not leaving yet," Anna said firmly. "This place is talking to us. We have to listen." Drift of the ice made every step unpredictable. The station groaned under stress of the moving earth beneath it, a structure meant to defy nature's will, now reduced to a shivering, hollow skeleton. Inside, the remaining team gathered in the mess hall, where the lights flickered like distant stars on the verge of dying out. No one spoke at first. Dr. Salma paced silently, her breath shallow, notebook clutched tight against her chest. Greg sat with his head in his hands, muttering half-prayers. Lars stood by the entrance, armed, eyes fixed on the sealed hallway that led to Lab C. Only Victor remained calm, pouring tea from a rusted kettle, as though this were just another quiet morning in the Antarctic. "We need to go back into Lab C," Salma said at last. "We need to know what it did to Marcus." Lars growled. "We already know. It stripped him of everything human. It wasn't mercy that made me shoot him." "No, it wasn't mercy," Victor said, placing the kettle down. "It was fear." Everyone looked at him. He smiled gently. "Fear of seeing what you don't understand." Marcus was mutating. His body was still fighting it. And if it could change him that quickly, don't you think it might already be in one of us? Greg stood up, shaking. "Don't say that. Don't even joke." "I'm not joking." They sat in silence again, the sound of wind rattling the windows like skeletal fingers clawing for entry. Then, a bang. Not a natural noise. Not the wind. Something slammed against the storage hatch. Lars raised his rifle. "That's on the west wall. We seal that door." The banging continued, methodical. Heavy. Metallic. Salma whispered, "That's not the wind." Greg grabbed a flashlight and stepped toward the hallway, against Lars' protest. He aimed a light down the corridor. Nothing. Then the light caught something at the end of the hallway. A face. But not Marcus' face. It was misshapen. Half human, half something else. The skin pulled tight across protruding bones. But the worst part, the eyes. They were filled with intelligence. And hunger. Lars fired. The bullet hit the wall. The thing was already gone. Victor closed the metal door behind them and turned the lock. "We're not safe here," he said calmly. "It's learning, adapting. It's not just an animal." Salma's hand shook. "Then what is it?" Victor paused before answering. "It's us, or what we could become." They began searching the logs Marcus had kept, searching for answers. Deep in the files, they found something disturbing. An older recording, time-stamped a week before the official discovery date. Marcus speaking directly into the camera, his voice strained. Subject, Alpha. It responded to human voices. It mimicked sounds. Then, last night, it spoke to me. It used my voice. It said it wanted freedom, that it came from beneath, from something buried in the ice. Not an animal, not a mutation. A signal, a call. The camera cut off mid-recording, glitching into static. Victor spoke softly. He was talking about communication. It didn't just infect him. It recruited him. Lars looked pale. Then that thing outside could be building something, Victor said. A collective, a hive. Another bang, closer this time. Then the emergency lights went red. Something had breached the ventilation system, and now it was inside. Path forward was narrowing, the air thick with mildew and the echo of dripping water. Every step Samuel took felt heavier than the last. Behind him, Ava's flashlight flickered, casting long, warped shadows on cave walls that seemed to shift when not being directly observed. They had descended deep into mountain, following the trail of old mining tracks left half-buried under stone and dirt. The team's earlier optimism had withered. What had begun as a scientific investigation was now raw survival, and Samuel couldn't ignore the feeling that the mountain wanted them deeper inside. "Do you hear that?" Ava whispered. Samuel paused, holding his breath. At first, nothing. Then, the soft scraping of claws against stone. Not fast, just deliberate, rhythmic. They turned a corner, and there it was, a corpse. One of their team members, Lucas, except it wasn't really him anymore. His body was stiff, skin like wax, but his face, his eyes, were wide open, as if he'd seen something so terrifying, so inhuman, that death was a mercy. Samuel's stomach turned. Ava turned away and dry-heaved. Carved into the wall next to Lucas was a crude symbol, an eye with no pupil, ringed by flame-like lines. Samuel touched it. The rock was unnaturally warm. "Who carved this?" he asked. "I don't think it was us," Ava said, wiping her mouth. They pressed forward. The deeper they went, the more signs they saw. Symbols etched into the stone, bones arranged in strange spirals, and the occasional shattered lens or piece of torn equipment from the other researchers. Each discovery confirmed one thing. Something intelligent had been here. Then they reached the chamber, a massive natural cathedral under the earth, illuminated dimly by glowing fungal veins that pulsed with a soft, greenish light. At the center, a perfectly circular pit. Inside, movement. "Wait," Ava whispered, grabbing Samuel's arm. "Do you feel that? Like it's in our heads." Samuel's vision blurred. Voices, not in the air, in his mind. Not words, but intentions. Hunger, awareness, and something worse, recognition. It knew him. He stumbled back. The entity in the pit was not physical in the way they understood. It seemed to shift between forms, a tangle of limbs and mouths one moment, then a shimmering curtain of eyes. It was fear, pulled into a shape his brain could barely comprehend. Ava screamed. One of the other soldiers, Jenkins, stepped forward as if entranced. His mouth opened unnaturally wide, eyes vacant. He jumped into the pit without a sound. Then silence. Samuel pulled Ava back, and they fled the chamber. But as they ran, the tunnels around them began to shift, not in a physical way, but in perception. The walls seemed to breathe. Doorways appeared where none had been. A new path opened, leading them back, but not to the surface. They ended up in a place that looked like their base camp. But the air was wrong. The shadows were deeper. The sky, if it was sky, shimmered like oil. It was a mimicry. The creature was showing them what it could do. And it wasn't just confined to the underground anymore. It had breached their minds. And soon, the surface. Others began to change, not just in body, but in their behavior, in the tremor of their voices, in the hollow stares that seemed to search beyond the walls of the facility. At first, it was small things. Dr. Havel left his notes on the floor, mumbling something about a voice he heard in the ducts. Yuri muttered in Russian constantly, eyes darting left and right, clenching his crucifix like it might burn the darkness away. Everyone had started sleeping with their doors locked. Even Dr. Evers. Mira didn't sleep at all. She stayed in the control room, reviewing footage over and over again. She was trying to find a moment where whatever had infected Jordan might have begun to spread. There were no clear signs, no obvious infection point, just darkness, time lapses in the tapes, and shadows that didn't move with logic. Then one morning, the southern gate was open. Nobody knew who opened it. The security log showed a full blackout at 3:27 a.m. Power cut for exactly 11 minutes. When it returned, the gate was unlatched, its mechanical bolts retracted, as if someone or something had walked right in. What if it didn't come from outside? Gavin whispered later, sitting beside Mira in the mess hall. What if it's been here the whole time? What do you mean? She asked. He leaned closer. They were researching animal fear responses, right? But what if the animals weren't the subject? What if we were? A heavy silence fell between them. That evening, they heard the second screaming. It came from Lab Block 3, where the cold specimens were kept, rows of ice-locked creatures collected from deep beneath the surface. When they arrived, they found two of the tanks shattered, the thick glass ripped apart from the inside. Dr. Havel's body lay beside it, or rather, what was left of him. Mira covered her mouth. Gavin turned and vomited on the wall. But it wasn't the gore that haunted them most. It was the claw marks on the walls, which ran all the way up to the ceiling. Whatever had been inside, that tank hadn't just escaped. It had climbed, and it had watched. That was the word Mira couldn't stop thinking about. Even hours after Havel's body had been bagged and moved to the freezer room, she felt it, a presence, not just unseen but intelligent, studying them, judging. Dr. Evers ordered an immediate lockdown. All outer doors were sealed with emergency override codes, and motion sensors were placed in every hall. No one was allowed to move unescorted. Yet, somehow, movement still registered, hallways lighting up where no one walked, cameras glitching at specific angles. Yuri, once the silent strength of the team, now paced his room whispering about the broken skin beneath the ice and the shape behind the sun. Gavin refused to eat, said the food was making his teeth itch. And Mira started seeing Jordan in her dreams. But he was different now. His eyes were wide open, no longer brown but pure black, and his voice whispered in reverse. She stopped sleeping altogether. Then came the footprints. Not human, not animal. They were somewhere in between, pad-like, but with long dragging toes and a claw on the heel, as if whatever was walked upright but hunched, knuckles occasionally grazing the walls. The prints began outside the destroyed tank, circled through the lab, past the sleeping quarters, and then stopped outside Myra's door for 8 minutes, and then vanished. The next morning, Dr. Evers was gone. No signs of forced entry, no sound from his room. He'd simply vanished, bed untouched, gear in place. His key card, however, was found inside the central generator, tucked between wires that had been gently chewed through. Gavin finally snapped. He tried to escape through the snow tunnels used for emergency venting. The team found him 2 hours later, crouched in the supply corridor, whispering to a dark corner where there was nothing. "There's more," he kept saying over and over. "There's more behind the walls. They're learning us." Mira didn't want to believe it, but when she checked the internal temperature logs at night, something caught her attention. The sensors. They were no longer tracking external heat signatures. Something was inside the walls, warm, breathing, and multiplying. Beneath, the word appeared on Myra's tablet, typed into the central terminal, time-stamped at 3:12 a.m. But no one claimed responsibility. The system showed no login, no access breach. Just one word, entered into the command line. Beneath. Mira stared at it, the cursor blinking like a silent metronome of dread. She turned to Yuri, now sedated after trying to gouge out the lights in the mess hall, mumbling that the glow was offensive to them. The remaining team members, just Mira, Gavin, and Rami now, stood in a circle in the central lab, trying to stay calm while the storm outside screamed louder than ever. "We need answers," Gavin said, face pale, shaking. "We're not just being watched, we're being studied." Mira agreed. The facility was rigged with ground-penetrating radar, designed for scanning glacial movements. She rerouted the controls to scan beneath the foundation. The machine hummed, sending seismic pulses into the layers of Antarctic ice. At first, the results looked normal. Then came the irregular voids. Not geological, not caverns. They were shaped, angular, deliberate, structured. One of them was directly beneath the station, about 30 meters down. Mira adjusted the depth filter. That's when they saw it. A network of tunnels. Not random, not natural. Built. Rami stared at the screen, horrified. "It's a hive." Gavin pointed at one spot. "That one's growing. The tunnel, it's rising." They didn't have time to argue. At that exact moment, every vent in the station breathed out a foul, wet hiss. A humid mist rolled from the shafts, stinking of iron and rot. And from the intercom, offline since Dr. Evers disappeared, came a voice. Not human, not mechanical. It sounded like all of them combined. A chorus of stolen voices whispering in unison. "We were here before you." The lights dimmed, doors open on their own. And from the darkness, a shape began crawling into the corridor. Not walking, not running, slithering. It had no eyes, but it smiled. That smile didn't belong on anything that had ever walked or slithered. This earth. Mira stumbled backward as the shape pulled itself into view, its limbs bending the wrong way, its mouth far too wide, filled with too many teeth. But worst of all was its skin, a patchwork of human texture stitched together with seams of dark, pulsing veins. Some parts looked like Dr. Evers, others like Yuri. One arm bore Gavin's tattoo, and yet Gavin stood beside her, shaking. "Close it." Mira screamed. Rami slapped the emergency door control, and the corridor steel hatch slammed down, cutting off the creature's approach. But not before they heard it laugh. Not a snarl, not a shriek. A soft, playful laugh, like a child pretending to be human. In the silence that followed, Myra's thoughts raced. "They're copying us," she whispered, piece by piece. Personalities, skin, speech, even habits. Gavin shook his head. "But why?" "To replace us," Rami answered. "To become us." There was a long pause. Then Mira spoke. "We need to get to the server room. If we can access the original logs from the first survey team, Dr. Adler's group, maybe we'll know what was uncovered. Something triggered this. Something woke them up." But the path to the server room lay through the east wing, past the vents, past where the thing had crawled in. With weapons loaded, 2 rifles and a flare gun, they opened the door. The hallway was empty. No blood, no sound, just shadows that moved slightly when they shouldn't. Rami led the way, stepping carefully around fallen debris. The lights above flickered in a rhythmic pattern now, on and off, almost like breathing, as if the facility itself had a pulse. Halfway through the corridor, Gavin froze. "Did you hear that?" They all turned. A soft scratching noise behind them. Then another, closer. And then, directly above them, a whimper. Not of pain, but of recognition. They looked up just in time to see a face peer through the vent grill. Dr. Evers, or what was left of him. His lips were sewn shut. His eyes were rolled back. His limbs twisted to fit the narrow air duct like a spider. And carved into his forehead was a word. "Beneath." He didn't attack. He just stared and smiled. "Beneath." The word burned into their minds long after the twisted image of Dr. Evers vanished into the vents. Gavin gritted his teeth. "We should turn back." That wasn't him. That wasn't anything human. Rami raised his rifle. "If we turn back, we're dead anyway. You heard what Mira said. We need the logs. If we understand what beneath means, maybe we'll know how to stop them." Mira stayed silent, but her hands were trembling. They reached the central stairwell, a wide, rusted shaft with grated steps spiraling downward. It was the only way to the server room below, and it reeked, the stench of rot chemicals, and something deeper, like soil that had never seen light, rose up to meet them, as if the foundation of the entire facility was alive and hungry. Step by step they descended. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. The lights here were dim, casting long shadows across the grated floor. Occasionally, strange moisture dripped from the ceiling, thick, dark, and almost syrupy. At the base of the stairwell, they found the server room. It was sealed shut with a thick magnetic lock. Rami worked on the panel, while Gavin kept watch, rifle trained upward. Mira knelt by a shattered glass panel and picked up a half-burnt clipboard. It was a checklist, a maintenance record, but in the margins, someone had scrawled words in blood-red ink. They are what we fear. They feed on memory. Do not look at them too long. Do not speak their names. Do not go beneath. The lock hissed open. The server room was mostly intact. Cabinets of hard drives blinked quietly in rows. Mira rushed to the central console and began pulling logs. It's all here, Dr. Adler's files. Expedition notes. Voice recordings. Censored data. She stopped. Here, play this. An old recording crackled to life. Record log 17. We found something below the ice shelf. Not a structure. Not a cave. A hole. Perfectly round. No edges. Just darkness. Yuri dropped the sensor line, but the signal changed. The line started to pull itself in. Then the voices started. Not echoes. Not madness. They knew our names. Knew our thoughts. It's alive, Adler. Another voice whispered. It's alive and it's waiting. Suddenly, the lights cut out. Total darkness. Then, a whisper right next to Gavin's ear. You're not real, Gavin. Not anymore. He spun and fired, his shot lighting up the room for just a blink. And in that blink, they saw dozens of faces pressed against the glass. Human, animal, fused. Some of them were their own. Then darkness again. No sounds. No breathing. Just that same horrific word, spoken softly from the walls, the vents, and even their own minds. Beneath, towering above the treetops like a skeletal finger clawing at the gray sky, the structure was almost invisible until they stood right beneath it. It had once been an observation post, an old, rusted firewatch tower, now half swallowed by vines and corrosion. Its stairs spiraled upward like a twisted spine. Daniel was the first to spot it. That's not on any of the maps, he murmured. No, but it matches the direction of the last signal, Aria said, pointing to her handheld GPS. The final data burst from Dr. Mallory's broken drone had triangulated roughly here. Do we really want to climb that thing? Aiden asked. It looks like a stiff breeze could knock it over. It might be the only place we'll get a proper signal, Aria replied. And I want to know what Mallory was trying to find here. As they ascended the tower, each step groaned under their weight. Below, the forest buzzed unnaturally quiet, as though it was waiting. At the top, they found something bizarre. Not just a view, a console, wires, equipment, all too modern to be from the original structure. Surveillance hardware, solar-powered, still blinking, and an open hard case. Inside, bones. Human, arranged like a ritual. Every piece numbered and labeled in scientific script. Beside it, a worn notebook. On the first page, Project Anima, last log. Aria flipped through quickly. Her face paled as she skimmed a series of scrawled entries. Subject 9 achieved cognitive projection outside the body. Fear mass reaches 88% with increased trauma loops. Containment no longer viable. Host minds fracturing. Our mistake was thinking the creature needed space. It needs thought. I've seen it. It lives in the gaps between memory and fear. It is us distorted. Daniel stared over her shoulder. What the hell is fear mass? But before she could answer, a sound rose from below. Voices. No one voice. Screaming. Overlapping. reverberating like a broken radio on loop. Arya turned toward the forest and gasped. Figures. Dozens. Crawling on all fours. Their skin stretched, their mouths open far too wide, teeth bared. Each one wore a face they had seen before. Teammates. Family. Even themselves. Their memories, Daniel whispered. No, they're twisted memories. They followed us from our thoughts, Arya said. The tower isn't broadcasting, it's receiving. She slammed the notebook shut. We need to destroy it. But it was too late. The signal had already reached them. Behind their eyes, they felt it stir. The creature, the experiment, feeding. And in that moment, Arya saw something in Daniel's eyes. He was no longer alone in his mind. Something else was watching her from behind his gaze. Hope was a fragile thing now. Every step Jacob took echoed through the hallway of the facility like a funeral drum. The others trailed behind. Eli, hunched and pale, holding his bleeding side, and Victoria, supporting Dr. Lansing, who could barely walk on the burns on his legs. They had escaped the lab, but the creatures were still somewhere in the compound. And worst of all, they didn't know what Luther had become. Jacob stopped at the next blast door. The keypad glowed faint blue in the dark, and beside it, the emblem of the Reclamation Initiative still gleamed on the wall, a stylized Ouroboros surrounding a human brain. He reached into his blood-soaked pocket and pulled out Lansing's stolen access card. It worked. The door groaned open slowly, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Unlike the tight, sterile halls they'd passed through, this room was cathedral-like. Arched ceilings, massive server towers pulsing with light, and in the center, a glass column reaching from floor to ceiling. Inside that column, a man, or what had once been one. Jacob staggered forward. Luther? The figure inside the column floated in a thick, golden liquid. His eyes were closed. Dozens of neural wires ran into the base of his skull, and his chest slowly rose and fell, kept alive by the machines around him. No way, Eli muttered. He's been in there this whole time? Lansing stumbled forward. He volunteered. He was the seed. He wanted to connect directly to the source. The source? Victoria echoed. Jacob turned. What is the source, Lansing? The scientist leaned on a railing, shaking. Not a creature. Not even biological. It was a signal. A thought. Transmitted from a void beneath that valley. From the thing we unearthed. And Luther? He merged with it. His consciousness expanded. Millions of thought patterns, fears, dreams, all filtered to the minds of those exposed. The creatures weren't born. They were drawn into reality from what people feared most. The source just needed a human anchor to stabilize its form. Luther was that anchor. A sudden clicking echoed above them. They all froze. The ceiling moved. From the blackness above, eyes opened. Hundreds of them. Dripping, lidless, luminous like headlights in fog. And slowly, arms descended. Thin, long, boneless things, like cables made of meat, sliding down from the heights above, reaching toward the chamber. The source has arrived, Lansing whispered. It knows we're here. Jacob stepped back. Can we shut it down? Destroy this place? Maybe. Lansing nodded at the console near the glass tube. If you fry the neural core, Luther dies. The anchor breaks. The source collapses. And what happens to us? Lansing looked up at the creature, descending from above. We die, but so does everything else. Jacob looked at Victoria. She nodded without hesitation. Eli gave a weak thumbs up. Jacob ran to the console and smashed the emergency purge. Inside the column, Luther's eyes snapped open, pure black, his mouth opening in a silent scream. Outside, the source screamed with him. Nightfall was not just the end of the day. It was the end of all things. The mountains, the mist, the trees, the silence. Everything stood still. And in that stillness, the truth finally bled through the cracks. Dr. Evelyn Monroe stood outside the cabin, her arms drenched in mud and blood, trembling not from fear, but from memory. Behind her, the last remaining soldier, Corporal Jensen, clutched a wound on his side, his breast sharp and hollow. He had seen it. They had all seen it. The creature. No longer just shadows and whispers. It had taken the form of Major Rhodes, then Davis, then Evelyn's father. It was never many creatures. It was one, a thought-born entity shaped by guilt, by secrets, by what each person feared most. And it had been feeding on them. All this time, they hadn't been hunted by a beast. They had brought it with them. They were the experiment. You brought us here. Jensen gasped, accusingly, voice barely audible. Evelyn didn't deny it. I had to know if it was still here. My father, he created this project. Project Recurse. Thought it could force soldiers to confront trauma, learn from it. He was wrong. It didn't teach. It consumed. She stared into the woods. The wind didn't blow. The birds didn't sing. The forest was listening. You knew it was alive. I thought it died in the fire, she said softly. But it just waited. The door behind them creaked open. But they hadn't touched it. Jensen turned. We have to end it. Burn the forest. Everything. Evelyn shook her head. No, you don't understand. She stepped back, because standing next to Jensen was another Evelyn. Same hair, same cuts, same shaking breath, except she was smiling. The real Evelyn whispered, "If you see yourself, it means it's already inside." Before Jensen could react, his skull hit the ground with a hollow crunch. The smiling Evelyn turned to the real one. "Now you understand," the creature said with her voice. "You were never meant to survive this place. You were meant to bring me back." A black, oily mist swirled around her feet, spreading, breathing. The trees cracked. The earth trembled. In the distance, the last emergency beacon blinked red, then died. The forest was no longer a location. It was a door, and it was open.